Good afternoon. Once again, our shir today is sponsored in memory of Chana Dvora Bas Avraham, and anyone who would be interested in sponsoring this or any other shir, please feel free to contact me. I decided to do something for various reasons, and that is to skip a bit of the Gemara and move on to what I'm going to call a famous story. I refer to this as a famous story because I think among the stories in the Gemara, it is one of the better known stories. It's a long story, and therefore what I've decided to do is that today we're just going to go through the story itself. Pshat level, just the basic story, and maybe a little bit today, but if not, more as we continue, we will then go back over it piece by piece and delve into some of the details and interesting insights about the story. So the Gemara earlier had referred to Rebbe Yehuda as Rosh HaMedabrim B'chol Makom, as the first speaker in all places. And now the Gemara asks, "My korulei Reish HaMedabrim b'chol makom." Why was Rebbe Yehuda referred to as the first speaker in all places? The Gemara explains, "Diyasiv Rebbe Yehuda v'Rebbe Yossi v'Rebbe Shimon." Rebbe Yehuda, Rebbe Yossi, and Rebbe Shimon, who were three of the leading Tanoim, leading sages of the Mishnah of their time, they were sitting together. V'Yosef Yehuda ben Gerim Gabayu. And Yehuda ben Gerim was sitting next to them. Pasach Rabbi Yehuda v'Amar, Rabbi Yehuda began and said, speaking about the Romans, who were then the occupying force in Eretz Yisrael, Kama no'im ma'asehem shel umazu. How beautiful are the actions of this nation. Tiknu shvakim, they've built markets. Tiknu gesharim, they have built bridges. Tiknu merchatzaos, they have built bathhouses. Rabbi Yossi Shasak, Rabbi Yossi did not respond to what Rabbi Yehuda said. He neither agreed with him, nor did he disagree with him. Nene Rebbe Shimon ben Yochai v'Amar. Rebbe Shimon bar Yochai spoke up and said, Kol ma shetiknu, lo tiknu el tzarech atzman. Everything they built, they only built for their own selfish interests. Tiknu shvakim, they built markets, lahushiv behem zonos, in order to sit prostitutes in the market. Merchatzaos, they built bathhouses, la'adein behem atzman, to beautify themselves. Gisharim, and they built bridges, litol mehem mechasim, in order to be able to collect tolls. Halach Yehuda ben Gerim, Yehuda ben Gerim went, v'siper divrayim, and he told other people about the conversation that these three Tanoim had. V'nishma'u l'malchus, and eventually the story came to the attention of the Roman government. Now, one thing is very clear in the Gemara, that Yehuda ben Gerim at no point in time intended for these words to come to the ears of the government officials, because he certainly would have been aware of the fact that they would not take kindly to Rebbe Shimon ben Yochai's criticisms. But he wasn't careful who he spoke to. And we know once you let a secret out of the bag, you no longer have any control about it. I'd also like to mention that even though as we're reading the Gemara here, the Gemara refers to him as Yehuda ben Gerim, Rabbeinu Tam in Tosfos says he should properly be referred to as Rebbe Yehuda ben Gerim, that he was a sage. And Rabbeinu Tam shows from other places in the Gemara that he was clearly a sage. He made a mistake by repeating the story, but that does not take away from the fact that he was a Torah scholar and a very respected one. So Amru, the Roman government said, Yehuda She'ila, that Rebbe Yehuda, who praised the Romans, Yis'ala, he should be exalted. And that's exactly the answer to the Gemara's question, that that's how Rebbe Yehuda became the Rosh HaMedabrim B'chol Makom, the chief spokesperson in all places. Yossi Sheshasak, Rebbe Yossi, who was quiet, Yigalo L'Tzipori, will be exiled to Sepphoris. And Shimon Shegina, Rebbe Shimon Bar Yochai, who denigrated the Romans, Yehoreg, he should be executed. Ozal Hu Ubrei, Rebbe Shimon Bar Yochai and his son went. Tashu Be Midrasha, they hid themselves in a yeshiva. Kol Yuma, Havas Maisi Luhu Devisu Rifta Vekuza Demaya Vikarchi. Every day his wife would bring them a loaf of bread, a pitcher of water, and they would eat it. But as time went on, the Romans couldn't find him. Kitokif Gezerta, when they strengthened the decree, maybe they put up more wanted posters, maybe they increased the bounty for whoever found Rebbe Shimon ben Yochai. Amarle lebrei nashim daiten kala alehem, dilma mitzarila umegalyala. He expressed to his son that he was concerned that if the Romans would torture his wife, she might not have the intestinal fortitude to resist revealing where they were hiding. So Azlu, they went. Toshu b'ma'arta, and they hid out in a cave with Mrs. Bar Yochai having no idea where they were. Of course, if they were in the cave and Mrs. B.Y. not knowing where they were, who was going to sustain them? Israchish Nisa, a miracle occurred. Ivri Luhu Charuva, and a carob tree was created for them. Ve'ena Demaya, and a spring. Vahavu Mishalchi Manayu, they would remove their clothing because they knew they were there for a long time and they had no way of replacing their clothing. Vavu Yasvi Ad Tsavarayu Bechala, and they would bury themselves in the ground and they would sit all day long with themselves up until their necks in sand. Kuli Yuma Garsi, all day long they studied Torah together. And we'll discuss this more, as I said, on our second way through, as we discuss this in more depth. But this was when Rebbe Shimon Bar Yochai and his son together composed many of his Kabbalistic works. Be'idan Tzluye, when it was time to daven, to say their prayers, Lovshu, they would get dressed. Michsu, they would be covering their bodies. Umatzlu, and they would daven. Vahadar Mishalchi Menayu, and then they would remove their clothing again. Ki hechidalo livlu, in order that their clothing should not wear out. Isivu Tresar Shani B'Ma'arta, and they spent 12 years in the cave. After 12 years was done, Asa Elionavi came, Vikama Pischa de Ma'arta, and he stood at the doorway of the cave. And Amar, he said, Man lode lebar Yochai de mis Caesar. Who's going to tell Rebbe Shimon Bar Yochai that the Caesar is dead? Ubatil gzeirase, and the king's decree that Rebbe Shimon Bar Yochai should be executed is nullified. So Nafku. Rebbe Shimon and his son went out. Chazu inshi de kakarvi vizari. And they saw people who were plowing and planting. Amar, they said, Benichin chaye olam. They are abandoning eternal life. Va'oskin b'chaye sha'ah. And they're involved in temporal life. It bothered them very much that instead of people spending their whole day long in the pursuit of Torah knowledge, that they were busy working on their sustenance. And kol makom shenostin nehem, any place to which they turned their eyes, miyad nisraf, immediately burnt. Yotza sabaskol, a voice came out from heaven, va'amr lahem, and said to them, lahachrev olami yitzasem, you came out of the cave in order to destroy my world. Chizru l'maraschem, go back to your cave. Hadar azul, they went back. Isivu tresar yarchi shata. They spent another 12 months, in other words, a year there. And Amri, they said, Mishpat Rishon B'Gehenim Yud Beis Chodesh. The wicked, when they are sent to hell, don't have to stay there more than 12 months. So we should be able to get out of here now as well. So Yosef Abaskol, a voice came out from heaven, Va'amra, and said, Tsu'u mima raschem, go out of your cave. Nafku, they went out. Now, Rebbe Shimon bar Yochai at this point in time understood the message and the lesson from the previous time they had come out of the cave. His son, who was younger and didn't have that maturity, hadn't learned the lesson. So, kol heichad havi machi Rebbe Lazar, any place that Rebbe Lazar smote, because when he was looking at things, he was still destroying them. Havi Masi Rebbe Shimon was healing. An Amar Lei, Rebbe Shimon said to his son, Bini, my son, Dai la'olam ani va'ata. It's enough for the world, it's enough of a merit for God to keep the world existence if only you and I are around. Bahadi Panya Demale Shabbata. On Friday afternoon, Chazu Saba, they saw this old man, Davi Nokit Trey Midani Asa, who was carrying 2 stalks from a myrtle. Virohit Bein Hashmashos. And as it was starting to get dark, he was running with the 2 myrtles, 2 myrtle branches. Amru, they said to him, Hani lamalach, why do you have these 2 myrtle branches? Amrlu, he said to him, the kavod Shabbos, in honor of Shabbos. Well, v'tiskilach bechad, why isn't 1 myrtle branch sufficient for you? He said, chad keneged zachor v'chad keneged shamor. In the 2 of the Aseres Adibros, the 2 places in the Torah where the 10 Commandments are recorded, one starts off saying, guard the Shabbos, and one says, remember the Shabbos. So because of those 2 different terms, the man said, that's why I have 2 myrtles. Amar le Lebrei, Sir Rebbe Shimon bar Yochai turned to his son. He said, Chazi, take a look. Kama chavivin mitzvos al Yisrael. Look how much the Jewish people love Hashem's commandments. At that point, Yosef Daitayu, their minds were calmed down. There's a lot to unpack over here. We didn't even get through the entire story. But I'm going to stop at this point. And God willing, in our next year, we will start to go through what we've gotten up to until now and to start share some insights in it. Thank you very much for listening. Have a good evening.